the streams everybody went to get here. Some of you guys are in line, and I told you yesterday I took off from Los Angeles at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I had a 2-hour layover in Denver to make a connecting flight to Shreveport. Except we didn't leave the ground in Los Angeles for 2 hours. One of those planes they put you on and they put you out on the tarmac, and then you sit for 2 hours. And I'm like, I'm not going to make this connecting flight. Because I wanted to come down here really good. We made this commitment a long time ago. And I'm looking at my watch, and I know when the plane is boarding. And so right when we were 20 minutes outside of Denver, I went up to the steward in the coffee station there, and I said, listen, is there any way you could get on the United Communications thing and tell them that you guys kept us on the ground for 2 hours, and it had nothing to do with the passengers, but I'm trying to make a connecting flight. It's really important to me. And he's a nice young guy, and I didn't give him any attitude when I asked this, because I told some of you, I'm trying to deal with letting go of things I can't control. And I know that sounds very new age, it's not. It's just an Irish trap that some of us fall into, thinking we can impose our will on things. And I wasn't in that headspace, I really wasn't. I reconciled that if I had to get a round trip ticket back to LA, and I was going to spend the weekend with the family, then so be it. It was in the car, it's whatever you believe in. And so I asked this young guy that, and I'll be darned if he didn't make some kind of communication, because we landed, and those of you who've been to Denver Airport, you know you have to leave your terminal and get on that subway train to get to the other terminals, like a finger. And so I dutifully went down, got on the train, went to the next terminal, went up, and I saw from, those walking escalator things, and I'm going on as fast as I can, just not fast, and I see A26, and I'm like, oh, that's me. And I almost let out, Shreveport! to get us attention. But I didn't. I exercised a little discretion, although that's where my brain was. So I get up to the gate, and there was this lovely young man there. The gate was closed. I mean, we're all on this. And I was opening my mouth, and he goes, John McGinley? And I'm like, yes. And he goes, we've been holding the plane for you. And I'm like, thank you. And I got on, and I made it down here. So it's good to see you. So my favorite thing with panels is I like to hear from you guys, so I don't like to generate a long preachy speech. I just like to hear any question you guys have. There's no bad question. Yes, sir.
Don't say, oh God.
That's terrible.
I'm curious, on Scrubs, you obviously have so many incredible lines. How much of what y'all did was ad-lib improv, and how much was actually scripted?
So with television, because you're doing so many pages a day, and there's something to quantify it, it's called a page count. And so every day there's a page count. And the priority in television is executing the page count. And none of that can happen if everybody's doing Robin Williams and Jim Carrey. You have to say what's on the page, because there's 7 writers who worked on that episode. And on Scrubs, there was 2 groups of 7, and they were in the writers' room A and writers' room B, and they would leapfrog each episode. So you get 7 kids who went to Harvard and with the editor Platoon, and they're really bright kids and young people. And so you largely what's on the page is really good. You can finesse some buttons. A button is an end joke before you exit. You can finesse a button, but you want to say what's on the page. If you don't, the writers stop writing for you, because they need their words to be heard. And if you're not going to floss and make them look good, they'll just give you the finger and write more for a different character who will deliver their syllables. So there's a real priority of saying what's on the page once or twice, and then if that's locked and you have some flavor you want to put in for take 2 or 3 or 4, you can. But we're moving on. It's all about the page count. So 10% of it was improvised. The rest is on the page.
Good question.
So
one of the things with Scrubs, I managed to get a friend of mine to start watching that, and I explained it to him that it's ER meets Family Guy. It's irreverent and absurd, but at the same time, it's balanced with art. And I think that was really evident in the episodes where you had everybody was game. Dr. Cox pour everyone into, except for the special needs patients. And I know that you have a background with special needs. I know you're a huge advocate and supporter. Were the casting of those characters into that series influenced with your background, or was that just kismet that Bill Lawrence had that written down already?
I asked Bill Lawrence, who was the creator of Scrubs and Ted Lasso and Shrinking and Cougar Town, and is a very dear friend of mine. I asked him from season 1, could we have someone from the special needs community, whether it was someone on the spectrum or someone with Down syndrome or someone with some kind of visual challenges, could we have a storyline, as opposed to B and C, which are woven into the story. I said, could be an A storyline about a person with challenges checking into the hospital. And Billy said yes, and it took a couple of seasons. And then we had a terrific young actor who I had known in and around different communities in Los Angeles. And that episode was signed, and that young actor was great. And so it was a request I made, and I wasn't trying to be a bully or trying to impose my agenda onto the show, which nobody needs an actor doing. I just thought it would be representing a group that is underrepresented. And also, there are a lot of actors in the Down syndrome community who can turn a joke and are trained actors and can read a script and can turn around and craft a character. And I can't remember the young actor who came in and did it. His mom is an agent for actors. I'm going up on his name right now, but yeah, I tried to push that without trespassing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Town. Okay, on the movie Platoon, I mean, what's it like working with Charles Sheen, Tom Berenger, a few others who are up and comers through the past year, and what's it like, have you ever met one of those parents who are film on your parents? How do they work compared to what's going on, what they've been through, and what's from the movie?
When we went to the Philippines in 1986, there had just been a revolution. And so there was a president who was the sitting president named Ferdinand Marcos, and he lost an election to a woman named Cory Aquino, and he wouldn't leave. And so there was a revolution. So we were postponed 6 months. And by the time we got there, Cory Aquino had taken over. She'd been installed as the president, but she didn't have the army. So there was a guy named General Ramos, who kept threatening a coup, seemingly every Thursday night. And the hostages in the Middle East, that thing had just occurred, and I don't know how well you are, but there were 161 hostages in the Middle East who had been taken for, I don't know, the better part of a year and a half. And we would have been perfect targets for such a kidnapping and a hostage situation. And my greater point is that the Tom Berengers and the Charlie Sheens and the Willem Dafoes and the John McGinleys of the world really sought shelter with each other. There was really nowhere else to go. There was no way to integrate yourself into the Filipino culture. It was way too dangerous. There were 12 and 13-year-old young boys walking around with AK-47s in Manila, and they were loved, and it was real. And just because you were making some silly Hollywood movie didn't insulate you from a revolution, and people who had nothing to lose, and where lives were worth significantly less than you perceived. And so the answer to the way Tom and Willem and Charlie and all this got along was that it was forced a little bit upon you to start to get with these other people. It was easy because those were all really quality young men. But there was no wiggle room in Manila. It was a very dangerous place. And for New Yorkers and other people whose spider senses were pretty good, it was really dangerous. It was a really dangerous place. And so you go like this. You just get with each other.
When did you find out that you were gonna, when the movie Platoon, that the actors were gonna have to go through like a basic training?
The question was, when did we find out about the almost 3-week boot camp?
Yeah.
It was in everyone's contract, and the hard part about the contract, and it's an interesting story, a bunch of New York actors, of which I was one, when you had to sign your contract, you had to say, and it's producer's discretion, if I get hurt, if I break my arm, the producer then has the discretion on whether or not I can participate in the movie, which only makes sense because you couldn't be an infantry soldier at the front with a cast. That wouldn't work. And so a bunch of actors, 4 or 5 of them, who were cast in the movie from New York, got together and said, we're not willing to sign that rider. And I had dropped out of a play and I lived in a funeral parlor on Sullivan Street. And I'm sitting in this 5-story walk-up, and I'm sitting in the funeral parlor. I dropped out of the play, and then we waited for 6 months for this revolution to come and go. You know, watching CNN every day. How do we got in if you were going to keep me from going to the Philippines after I dropped out of Hamlet, and I was playing the Airties, and just, you know, Ophelia's brother and the great sword fight in the 3rd act. You couldn't have me. So the other actors, the 4, Oliver fired them all and replaced them. And I was just like, I'm not down with you guys. I'm going, and I'm not going to get hurt because I'm a really good athlete, and I'm not going to get hurt. And I didn't get hurt. I didn't get hurt. And they pretend Hollywood boot camp. It's not that hard.
We got a guy with the mic right here.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? With
I can.
the mic? Okay, great. That makes my voice weird anyway. My question is about the animal film. If they were to remake it, would you want to have the same role, or would you want a different actor playing your part?
I think the question was about the animal. There was a sequel that I do, and I would love to. Rob's a quality guy, and that was a fun character. I got hurt really bad on that film. At the end, when I'm chasing over that chasm, I had something on me. It was about a 20-foot leap, so I couldn't do it. So you get a rig on you called a decelerator, and a decelerator is a cable that's attached to a flak jacket you have underneath your wardrobe, and it goes back to a crane. And once you're at the apex of your leap and you're starting to descend, gravity dictates you're going to accelerate, and it decelerates your descent. And we did it twice in reversal, and it worked fine. And then something happened with the calibration where I left off one side, and it accelerated me into a cliff. And my right toe, I put my foot out to brace my crash. And my toe went to my shin, and it ripped one of my calf muscles off. And so we shut down for 2 weeks because I was hurt pretty bad. And then I didn't do any more walking shots the rest of the film. I just did, they call it 2 T's, which is your chest up. And so I got hurt really bad on the film, and so I'd love to revisit it where I could be active again and not injured. But yeah, go in a second. It's a great game. Will you say it again, honey?
What was your favorite part on Bench?
On which one?
Bench.
Oh, Bench. Bench, the question's about the movie Bench. And I thought a couple things about Bench. It was originally called Rounding Third, which anybody who did baseball knows. Rounding third in a title would be something's possible. You're rounding third. Anything's possible. You can be safe at home. You can be tagged up. Anything's possible. And some teams switch into Bench, which is automatically negative. And it means in any parlance that you did something wrong and you're on the bench. I think that's just a mistake. I said it's not, it automatically means something's wrong. And my experience on Bench was really hard because in the Screen Actors Guild, you're allowed to work 3 consecutive weeks for 6 days each. And a super low budget film, which Rounding Third Bench was. And that means you can work 18 days, and usually means you're taking a Sunday off. So we're in Nashville, where it's as hot as here. And we worked those 18 days. And unfortunately, in that formula, that low-budget formula where you can work 3 6-day weeks in a row, that assumes that everything is going to go right. And on a low-budget film, everything is going to go wrong. Because you have department heads, this is their entree, this is their chance to get in. They're not going to do a studio film, they're not going to do a Marvel film. So the head lighting group and the makeup people and the wardrobe people, they're new and they make mistakes. And you can't make any mistakes in an 18-day schedule. And so that script was so good, and it was underserved by an 18-day shooting schedule. And so I see different, when I watch it, I see different stuff that we were so close to, but we couldn't quite get. Because when you start to rush, when the impetus, when the verb is to rush, that's not going to serve the narrative. Sometimes you got to let it sit. And so for the scene between me and you in this auditorium, we're going to do a wide shot of you and then come in a little tighter. That's 3 setups, each focal point on you, from this ceiling so we can see where you are, to a little tighter, and then to Titus, which is called Hero. That's 3 shots on you. And so that's 6 hours. And then we come around after lunch, we're going to do the corresponding 3 shots on me. That's the day. That's what we're doing in this auditorium today. We're doing 3 shots on you and pushing in, and then we're going to turn around that wall, and we're going to do the opposite. We're going to push in and in. And on Benched, we would adjust on the medium shot on you and the medium shot on me. And then you lose the flavor of the room. We have to see where you are. We have to find out what environment you're in. You ask the question, and then we have to see that it's the 2 of us up here, and then punch into a tighter shot. That's right. We have to have a shot of you. So that's 4 shots in this direction. And in Benched, when you're rushing, you're gonna chop some of those shots, and it makes the film less elegant and the storytelling a little rougher. That's a really good question.
You were absolutely hilarious on Are We Done Yet? What was it like playing a character with so many roles?
Are We Done Yet is a film I did with Ice Cube and AKA Cube, and they sent me the script and it was hilarious. And there was 5 different roles, and we were in Vancouver, and my fiance and now wife Nicole was up there with me. And that was one of those films, and you can never say this, but everything that could have gone right on that film went right. And Cube, who is also the producer, because they had done Are We There Yet? And this was the sequel to that. He had a crew that was dialed in, and when you have somebody like Cube, who's also a businessman, you're doing 10-hour days, you're not doing those 16-hour days, so you're not burning the crew out, you're not burning the actors out. And we were doing 10-hour days, mostly exteriors in beautiful Vancouver in the summer where it does not rain. It rains the rest of the year. But everything possibly went right on that film went right. It's one of my favorite films.
And my favorite role of yours is that small part in Office Space. I worked in corporate office for years. And the way you performed that role was just so why can't we have bosses like that in corporate, work? Yeah, because I bought it. It is so well. I'm interested, I'm curious, was there anything particular that you were channeling or trying to prepare for that role, or a particular person that you knew? What was going on in your mind?
Well, with Office Space, Mike Judge, who also did use Slydell and has had a lot of success in animation, he sent out to audition for Office Space, which everybody did. He sent out a crude, not quite stick figure, but a crude animation of Lumberg, the guy who runs the office, Gary Colvin.
Yeah.
And so everybody auditioned for Lumberg. And then Mike said, "We're got Gary for Lumberg. Do you want to play one of the Bobs?" And I said, "The Bobs aren't on the page. They're largely extras." And he said, "Well, you can just write whatever you want." And I love to massage scripts. And so I showed up in Austin, and the week before I went to Austin, which is where we shot it, I got offered a Matthew Perry, rest in peace, Ned Campbell comedy up in Toronto from Warner Bros. And Office Space was a low-budget independent comedy, and so you weren't getting paid much for Office Space. But this Ned Campbell film up in Toronto was a big budget Warner Bros. Comedy, and so I called Mike up and I said, "Is there any way, since the Bobs, the downsizers, are really just in that interview interior, they're out on the floor once, they're in Milton's cubicle once, so they're just in those exteriors, interior run." And so scheduling wise, I said, is there any way we can compress the Bobs into the 3 or 4 days instead of you're going to keep you there for a month in Austin? And is there any way we could, this is a preposterous ask. And I said, could you possibly wrap me out before Friday? And sure he did. And so the only reason that's germane to your question is when actors get to put on blinders, tantamount to a Kentucky Derby thoroughbred, they perform better. So they don't come up for air. They just stay in this, hopefully, this groove. And so I showed up in Austin Sunday. I had a wardrobe fitting Sunday night. And I shot Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I was on the last flight out Thursday night to Toronto. I did wardrobe there on Friday afternoon, and I shot with Bob Alban Saturday afternoon on some crazy exterior. And so Mike just did this most solid thing in the history of the planet and served the movies because the Bobs were just there. It was the Bobs 96 hours. And actors do better when they just put blinders on. If you can point in the right direction. And we definitely were pointed in the right direction. And those 4 days just yielded so many dividends in the context of that film. It's a good question.
What was it like working with
Could you wait for the mic, please, bro? We got this people that are going to watch this later won't be able to hear your voice.
Excuse me. What was it like working with Al Pacino any given Sunday?
I asked my truest friend, Johnny Cusack, who does City Hall with Al. And Al's such an icon. And I'm sitting there, and obviously I'd worked with Oliver plenty of times, but I'd never worked with Al. And there's no small amount of hero worship between me and Al Pacino. And so I said, Johnny, what do you do? What about Al? And he goes, go knock on his door. Because nobody does, because he's this icon. And so Al gets isolated on movies. And Johnny goes, go knock on his Winnebago door. And I did the first day of shooting, and a large Italian man came out, who was his assistant and bodyguard. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And I go, I'm Johnny McGinley, I'm playing in the movie. And he goes, I know you are. Al wants to talk to you. I'm like, I'm so sure Al Pacino wants to talk to me. And that established this great rapport that I cultivated the whole shoot. And it was a long shoot. It was about 4.5 months. And it was so wonderful, the connective tissue that we both had, that a couple years later, when Al was in the revival of Glengarry Glen Ross on Broadway, he asked me if I wanted to play in it, and that was the most thrilling experience of my life. And so the time I spent with Al in Miami and then Dallas and Los Angeles yielded being on Broadway with Al together. And so that's pretty extraordinary.
I was just wondering about Scrubs and being such a jerk the whole time. Was that difficult every day when it came to be that character? And was the moments where you were actually soft and nice to somebody, especially, I forget the main character's name, but basically him maybe once a season, I guess it happened? Was that great?
I think given the mandate that Dr. Cox is not a babysitter, and that what he's challenging these young people to, in the context of the story, is saving lives, not connecting a pipe. And that mistakes would cost people their lives. And so that he didn't suffer fools in that context, all of a sudden becomes accessible, and it feels less like a jackass than someone who's not playing games. And so I decided that Cox would teach with a spoonful of dirt, and a teaspoon of sugar. But we're going to get to there. And as far as bringing kind of the reality of Cox's love, I only took Scrubs, A, because I thought it was good, but B, was the job in Los Angeles, and my son Max did it more, and Max is born with Down syndrome, he's doing great, he's fine. But at the time, I couldn't reconcile being away from him. And so a job in Los Angeles, which this is going to sound completely counterintuitive, but most jobs now are outside of Los Angeles. You go to locations. And the TV industry had moved to locations. And this was going to be Railroad Burbank and playing a really damaged guy, which writers can write damaged characters and not make them redundant. In other words, the boy gets the girl wants to get the boy. That story is finite, because sooner or later we're going to get each other, and now what do you do? But Cox is this cavalcade of damaged eccentricities that writers can write. And so I decided to bulldoze or around Cox's edges. I would bring Max and my sternum to the set every day. And then, and only then, would the lens know that Cox has something he doesn't want to share with anybody, and it's love. But everyone doesn't get it, because like I told you before, I'm charging you with saving lives. You don't get my love until it's the bottom of the night and the bases are jacked. And I see that you need oxygen, and oxygen is love. That's what I'll give to you. And the camera picks up all that stuff. It doesn't know that Max is in my sternum, but the camera, the lens is an X-ray machine. The lens knows something's going on. And so when actors bring that life, that inner life to a scene, it cooks. That's when it cooks.
So you're a Red Wings fan, but you're not from Michigan. I'm a Michigander, Red Wings fan myself. So just curious, what drew you to the team? Some of your favorite moments as a fan, and some favorite players besides.
I missed the beginning of the question.
Oh, as a Red Wings fan, I'm one myself. Just wondering what brought you to the team, what you like about it, favorite moments, favorite players.
My next door neighbor was Chris Chelios, and I asked Kelly if I could wear his jersey, 24, and on the world champion, two-time world champion when he was there, Stanley Cup champion Red Wings. And so all my favorite moments around Kelly, and then the joke was, when Scrubs was trading in ties, I think when we were on after Frasier and before Friends, at that 8:30 time slot, we were doing about 18 million people a week. And I said, Kelly, just so you know, the Red Wing finals in the Stanley Cup do about 3 million people. So many more people have seen me wearing your jersey than have ever seen you wearing your jersey. So I'm just a gift to you. So all my Red Wings, all my love for Red Wings is about Shelby.
You have an affinity for both comedy and drama, sometimes in the same scene. Do you prefer one to the other?
No, my preference is when it's written on the page. Otherwise, you have to commit that day, and you see the pages and whatever is rewritten, and whether it's genius or it's going to be Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill, you got to do it. And if it's lousy, and the producers are relying on you to pull a rabbit out of a hat, that's exhausting. Nor are you being paid for that. And so it doesn't matter to me if it's comedy and it's funny on the page, or someone like Mike Judge says, you can create a boss. And I'm like, okay, be careful what you ask for, because this is going to be really subversive and glib and sardonic, and those are hard notes to play. And they're hard for studio execs to be able to interpret instead of just a 7-syllable joke with a payoff. You know, the Bob's is so wry, it's so sarcastic that you got to go with them. And that when he gets excited about the guy being a Michael Bolton fan, and he's honest to God excited about Michael Bolton, that's really subversive. And you gotta commit to it. And so, the answer to your question is, if I'm doing Glengarry on Broadway with Al Pacino and David Mamet won the Pulitzer for Glengarry, put me in. That's all on the page. You just say what's on the page. But if we're doing Scrubs and Billy Lawrence is writing it, the guy who writes Ted Lasso and all the Norman Lear's generation, what's on the page is going to be really good. And so I don't care if it's a drama or if it's comedy. I'm just driven by what's on the page.
We loved you in Brooklyn Nine-Nine and also Scrubs, but what I wanted to ask you was, those classic insults that you delivered on Scrubs, were any of those added, or was that just straight off the page? Some of that come from you because this is so amazing.
Bill Lawrence, who wrote Scrubs, found out that we were calling Johnny Cusack girls' names because he was acting like an entitled queen. And so, to try to put him in his place, I don't know if we'll be able to do this in 2024, but Bill Lawrence found out that we were treating Cusack, trying to put him in his place by just chopping him down a little bit and cross-gendering him. And he said, you should do that to Zach. I'm like, okay. And that's the backstory of calling Zachy girls' names. There's a rumor we're going to do this again next year, the show. And I wonder if we'll be able to call Zach. No, if I'll be able to call Zach girls' names in 2025.
Just do it.
That'll be a Bill Lawrence.
Don't do it, he'll do it, just Justin. You have to do it.
I know, you're right. You're right.
Screw cancel culture. Do it! Do it! Superman said do it.
The cast of Scrubs got to participate in a Muppets production. What was your fondest memory of that?
Oh, wow.
It was a day off, it was a Tuesday, and we had, I think, Miss Piggy on a gurney, and the person who voices Miss Piggy was in a box underneath the gurney. And gurneys usually are pretty light and mobile, and you can move them. But because there was so much stuff on the gurney, and then there's a puppeteer, and so two men were in a box underneath the gurney, the bed. And there was all sorts of technical issues, and it just was really fast. There was only those two scenes, and then we were out, and the Jim Henson people came in, and it wasn't their first thing. They were very good at this, and they set up that gurney, and before you know it, we were doing that very Muppet Christmas, I think, and it was great. It was great.
So I have a question regarding your two high-level law enforcement guest appearances with Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Chicago PD. Two very different shows, but you play a similar-ish character. Which one was more difficult to deal with, like on a full comedy set or on more of a drama set?
Chicago PD was executive produced by a classmate of mine from NYU named Eric LaSalle. And Eric brought me out. We've been trying to do it for years, but after Scrubs, thankfully, a bunch of gigs happened, from Standing Against Evil to Ground Floor to going to Broadway. And so there was these constant obstacles that prevented you from going to Chicago and being with Eric, who's a very dear friend of mine. And finally, there was a window there where I could go out and play the guy Kilton, who was the head of he was the commissioner of the police department and aspiring mayor, and just a guy driven by ambition and greed. And at no point do we try to reconcile these things. He's just about greed and ambition. And actors always want to show you that the character's not really like that. The character has this. And this was just an unrepentant person of ambition. And whatever got in the way, he was going to destroy. And that's really delicious. And the writers can write that stuff instead of, showing a scene with his son in the park flying a kite. That wasn't his character arc. And so it was lovely to go out to Chicago every couple of weeks to play that character. I think I only did 7 or 8 episodes. It wasn't enough. And I started to fall in love with what the writers were crafting. That this guy really was on a track of ambition that dictated going from being the commissioner of the police force to mayor to governor to senator to president. You know, one left someone's imagination on a while. And I knew they would kill him off in the season, but I was falling in love with this arc. And I really didn't want to leave Chicago because it was a great day. I was with my dear friend, and in the middle of it, in October or so, the fires happened in Elwood, and our house was about 7 houses away from where almost 800 structures burned. And the dirty little secret of Malibu is that it had been a middle class community, kind of a working class community that fed Los Angeles when it was established in the 40s and 50s. And so what that means is the houses were made with asbestos. And a lot of those houses that burned, the asbestos vaporized and was collected in the smoke and deposited under the eaves of smoke-damaged houses. So a lot of us decided to exercise the insurance and relocated the family to Boulder. And I was commuting between Boulder and Chicago for months and months and months as the whole smoke mitigation, as the mitigation was happening. And so it really was this gift. And I had in my contract that you wrapped every night last night out in Chicago because I was coaching my daughter's ASYO soccer team. And so this is a tangential part of the story. So I went into the production office because it was getting late on a Wednesday night, and I saw the call sheet for Thursday, and I called up the production office and I said, I don't see any stuff with Tom in it on Thursday. And the woman at the production office, who was a friend of mine named Marv, she said, it's going to be too cold tomorrow because that Arctic blast, or whatever they call it, was coming in. The polar vortex was coming in off the lake. And I said, well, can't we just house the actors and the crew in a bus, let the lighting department light it and run the wire, and then when it's time, you bring everybody out and you shoot it. And she said, the camera, which has a liquid crystal display, and it's called a red camera, it's about $800,000. She said, that will expand and contract and might explode. And I said, so to be clear, you don't really care about the actors, you just care about the camera. Just hang over my places. And she said, yes, Sean, in fact, you can fly out tonight. We don't need you, and she could lost my jobs. But it just struck me that it was clear as day. The red camera is the priority now. And as far as Brooklyn Nine-Nine, that was in the middle of COVID. Everything in Los Angeles was shut down. They had been canceled after 6 years and got a reprieve 7th year. And out of nowhere, that dropped in my lap. And so it was a really easy gig because all this COVID stuff was going on before you could step onto the lot. So you had to remember, you get the swab and in your mouth and go sit over there while the stick goes through the lab, and now you can come on the lot. And as a result, and it can recycle page count now that you know what it means. As a result, the page count on Brooklyn Nine-Nine was like 2 or 3 pages a day because the COVID interventions where when you came in, you had to go sit over there for a while. You weren't on the set for 3 hours until you reported. And then you had hair, makeup, and wardrobe. And so the shoot day was about 3.5 hours. So it wasn't very ambitious. The workload was a piece of cake. But it was like one of the only gigs in Los Angeles during COVID, whenever it was at its apex. All the entertainment, because nobody knew what was going on, obviously, in every industry. And so that they were shooting, that was a gift. Because there were no jobs. So that was a great gig.
All right, guys, I see a lot of hands, but unfortunately, we have another guest that's going to be coming up here. You guys that have questions, still go by his booth and talk to him. And
don't we have time for tomorrow?
We might have time for 2 more, if they can be some easy, I'll say like 6 hands go up. All right, up here in front, we got one, Brandon. Did you already have the microphone? All right, so we're gonna let him, and we're gonna come here to the front, guys, and we're gonna have to.
So, John, Scrubs fans appreciated the range that we got to see from the cast members. In my Screw Up, we got to see you go through the stages of grief. Skip forward some episodes, and we get my musical, where everybody in the show was doing choreography and Broadway performance. That particular episode was genius in its execution. How difficult was it for you and other actors to learn the choreography and the presentation of Broadway over normal television?
The musical episode of Scrubs played to most of the ensemble's strength. From Donald, who had been on Broadway musical, had done summer stock in upstate New York for 3 years when I was growing up. Zachy had done musicals. Judy has the most beautiful voice on the planet. Ken can tap dance. And so it was no coincidence that Billy was playing into the ensemble's strength. And so we took a week off, which is unheard of in a sitcom, and did all the music. The one who wrote the music had won a Tony for Avenue Q, and the music was very accessible. The lyrics were very accessible, and again, it played to the ensemble strength. And everybody relished being able to have a week of rehearsal, which there's usually about 30 seconds going into the set, being handed rewrites of the 2-page, single-space monologue, and just going into fear mode and trying best. This was a luxury. I mean, the musical was a luxury.
Are you heading back to Broadway anytime soon?
It's funny, they offered me All the Way, which was the LBJ, Lyndon Johnson story that my friend Brian Cranston ended up doing. But they offered it to me first, and my cup was full after Glengarry, which was the most thrilling experience of my life. And everything I had done led up to it. It's such a hard play. And I turned down All the Way because I would have gone straight to Harvard, which was where the out-of-town tryout was. They had a theater up there, a Broadway theater up at Harvard in Cambridge. And I wanted to get back to everybody in Malibu and be Daddy the driver. I like driving people to soccer practice. It's what I signed up for. And so I would do it again, but with conditions. It would have to be somewhere in the neighborhood of as special as Glengarry was. And if that, we can all dictate our own demands, and they may never happen, and I understand that. And if it were to happen, I'd do it. If not, then my cup is so full, I can't even tell you.
We got one more guy.
Oh, good.
Right here. What was it like working with Michael Caine and Steven Seagal on Getting Around?
We were up in Prince William Sound, which is in the most northern, where the oil pipeline comes out, is where we were shooting at. And it was the middle of the summer, so it never got dark. And I got to be Michael Caine's aide de camp, his henchman. And I definitely hero worshiped him. And he was who you wanted him to be. He was one of the great storytellers. And you almost had to stop him for telling stories. And this is a guy who is best friends with the royal family, has done, The Man Who Would Be King with Sean Connery, and Batman, and everything in the history of the planet. And I had him all to myself for like 8 weeks. And I just wanted to hear him tell stories. And he was available to that. So it was playing to his strength. And I had him all to myself up in Alaska. And he was telling me stories nonstop. It was heaven. Stephen was the director. He's a very strange human being. His voice is very bad, and I remember that at the end of the film, I had to get my head stuck in the top of assessment. And so we had relocated down to the oil refineries south of the airport in Los Angeles, about 20 minutes south of LAX. There's all these refineries. And so we're there, it's a night exterior. There's a fan set up, not on the plane, obviously. The shot is through the fan, going around. And I want to get about as close to the fan as about from me to the speaker about here. That's as close as you need. You shoot the other way. And the stunt guy goes, the stunt coordinator said, could you get any closer? And it's 3 in the morning, so everything goes wrong. And I'm like, no, I'm good. You can shoot over my shoulder. You can fudge the heck out of this with me getting about 36 inches from the fan. He goes, could you move it a little bit? I'm like, absolutely not. And so he said, okay, well, I'll tell Stephen, and you go back to your trailer. So I'm sitting in my trailer, we come in, and Stephen comes into my trailer, and he goes, John, I heard you won't go any closer to the camera. I'm like, Stephen, I know how, I'm arm's length is about 40 inches. We're comfortable talking to somebody at arm's length. And I get, I'll go arm's length to that fan. Just going around really fast. And he goes, John, do you love your father? Okay, I'll play it along. It's 3:30 in the morning. Yes, Stephen, I love my father. He goes, I'm your father. I'm like, you are not. You are not. You're not going to do some Vulcan mind trick on me. Whatever trend, whatever crazy this story, you're going, I've done 75 films by then. And I'm like, Stephen, 40 inches. Your father's disappointed. I'm like, you get out of here. Stop doing your father thing. You're not my father. You're Mr. Tough Guy. So I got 42 inches away from that thing. And guess what? In the film, it looks like my head's in the plane.